Admiral Kyle Brennan stood perfectly still on the bridge of the Dominion warship Eternal Watch, his 3 eyes fixed on the holographic display floating before him. The blue light cast strange shadows across his face as he processed what he was seeing. 47 Krell warships. All of them dead. Just floating there in the darkness of space like broken toys scattered across a child's bedroom floor. But these weren't toys. These were the monsters that had haunted the Dominion's nightmares for 3 solid years. Sir? His sensor officer, a young Vaxel named Trent, looked up from his console with confusion written all over his features. Should I run the diagnostic again? Kyle's mandibles clicked together nervously. It was an old habit from his homeworld, something his species did when they were stressed or confused. Right now he was both. Run it again. Run it 5 more times if you have to. I need to be absolutely certain of what I'm seeing here. Trent's fingers danced across the holographic controls. The sensors swept the battlefield again, analyzing every piece of debris, every energy signature, every trace of what had happened here in the void sector. This region of space was supposed to be empty. It was a buffer zone between Dominion territory and the wild frontier where the Krell swarm bred and multiplied. Nobody came out here unless they had to. And nobody survived the Krell if they did. Analysis complete, sir, Trent said quietly. His voice had that tone people get when they don't want to believe their own words. No Dominion energy signatures detected. No plasma weapons. No ion cannons. No particle beams. Nothing we recognize. Kyle felt his stomach twist. In his 40 years of military service, he'd seen a lot of impossible things. But this was different. The Galactic Archives contained information on every single spacefaring species in known existence. 10,000 years of collected data. 14,000 languages. 50,000 star systems. 847 member species in the Dominion alone. Every weapon, every ship design, every method of faster-than-light travel ever discovered was recorded in those archives. It was the greatest achievement of galactic civilization. Nothing could surprise them anymore. They'd seen it all. Until today. What about the Krell themselves? Kyle asked, moving closer to the display. Any survivors? Any distress signals? Anything? Negative, sir. All 47 vessels show catastrophic damage. Their biological hulls have been, well, torn apart is the best way to describe it. Whatever hit them knew exactly where to strike. Every ship was disabled with surgical precision. Kyle zoomed in on one of the wrecked Krell vessels. The Krell didn't build ships the way other species did. Their technology was organic, grown rather than constructed. Their warships were living things, huge creatures bred for war with weapons that fired acidic projectiles and energy beams powered by biological processes. They were terrifying. They were unstoppable. Or at least they had been until today. The Krell swarm had appeared 3 years ago on the frontier. Nobody knew where they came from. They just showed up one day and started attacking colonies. They destroyed settlements, killed millions, and kept coming no matter how many ships the Dominion sent against them. They fought with a savage intelligence that seemed impossible for creatures that looked more like insects than thinking beings. The Dominion had thrown everything at them. The best weapons. The finest military minds. Nothing worked. The Krell just kept adapting, kept growing, kept spreading. There were rumors that High Command was considering abandoning the entire Outer Rim. Just pulling back and letting the Krell have it. And now this. Someone or something had wiped out an entire Krell battle group. Alone. In a region of space where no Dominion forces were stationed. Sir, the salvage team is reporting in, another officer called out. They've recovered a piece of debris with markings on it. Put it on screen. The hologram shifted, showing a twisted piece of metal. It was clearly not Krell in origin. The surface was smooth, manufactured, covered in some kind of heat-resistant coating. And there, etched into the surface in sharp, angular letters were words. UNSC Valiant. Run it through the linguistic database, Kyle ordered immediately. The ship's AI, an ancient program that had been updated and refined over thousands of years, went to work. Kyle watched the screen as the AI cycled through language after language. Human languages. Alien languages. Dead languages from civilizations that had fallen millennia ago. Mathematical languages. Symbolic languages. Everything. Nothing matched. The angular letters just sat there on the screen, mocking them with their strangeness. They looked almost simple, like they should be easy to read. But they matched nothing in the entire galactic database. It was as if someone had made them up yesterday. Kyle's mandibles clicked rapidly now. His hearts were beating faster. This wasn't just unusual. This was terrifying. Get me a secure channel to High Command, he said quietly. Priority 1. Encryption level maximum. When the connection was established, Kyle chose his words carefully. Every word mattered in a report like this. This is Admiral Kyle Brennan, commanding the Eternal Watch. I am transmitting sensor data and recovered debris from the Void Sector. Unknown Force has eliminated an entire Krell battle group using weapons and technology not present in our archives. The enemy was destroyed with 0 friendly casualties. No identification possible. No language match. No energy signature match. He paused, letting that sink in. Recommend immediate highest alert status across all Dominion space. We have a complete unknown operating in our territory. For the first time in recorded history spanning 10,000 years of galactic civilization, the Dominion had encountered something they couldn't identify. Somewhere out there in the darkness of space, something powerful was moving. Something that could destroy the Krell with ease. Something that didn't appear in any records. And nobody had any idea what it was, where it came from, or what it wanted. Kyle stared at those strange letters one more time. UNSC Valiant. What did it mean? Who were they? And why had they been invisible to the galaxy's most sophisticated detection systems for so long? The questions hung in the air like smoke, and Kyle had a sinking feeling that the answers, when they finally came, would change everything the Dominion thought they knew about the universe. Dr. Rachel Torres sat in her cramped research pod, surrounded by floating holographic screens displaying data that made no sense. She'd spent the last 15 years of her life digging through the ruins of dead civilizations. Ancient temples on forgotten worlds. Crashed ships that had been drifting through space for millennia. Lost colonies where the inhabitants had vanished without a trace. She was good at finding answers in the past. The dead told their stories if you knew how to listen. But this was different. She wasn't investigating a dead civilization. She was investigating one that was very much alive, very active, and apparently very good at destroying the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had seen in generations. The Dominion Council chamber had been absolute chaos for 3 straight days. Rachel had watched from the observation gallery as representatives from 800 different species shouted, argued, and demanded answers that nobody had. Some wanted immediate military mobilization. Others called for peaceful contact attempts. A few paranoid voices even suggested this was some kind of elaborate Krell trick. But the most disturbing moment came when someone asked the archives keeper for information. The archives keeper was older than most civilizations in the room. It was an AI that had been built thousands of years ago, continuously updated and refined. It contained every scrap of knowledge the Dominion had ever collected. If something existed in known space, the archives keeper knew about it. When asked about the unknown force, the AI had gone silent for exactly 47 seconds. That might not sound like long, but for a quantum computer that processed information at impossible speeds, 47 seconds was an eternity. Finally, it had spoken. No spacefaring species can achieve faster-than-light travel without generating detectable signatures. The warp bubble effect creates gravitational distortions. Hyperlane entry produces tachyon emissions. Dimensional rifts leave energy traces. All of these are automatically detected by our monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. It is impossible for a species to develop space travel and remain undetected. Yet here we are, Council Prime had said quietly. With wreckage and weapons signatures that match nothing in your database. The AI had no response to that. Rachel had been assigned to the investigation immediately. If anyone could track down this mystery, it would be her. She'd found needles in haystacks across 100 worlds. How hard could one missing civilization be? She was beginning to realize the answer was very hard. The energy signatures were all wrong. Rachel had pulled every scan from Admiral Brennan's encounter, studied every frame of sensor data, analyzed every microscopic detail. Whatever had destroyed those Krell ships hadn't used plasma weapons, hadn't used ion cannons, hadn't used any form of directed energy that appeared in the galactic database. The damage patterns suggested kinetic impacts, physical projectiles moving at incredible speeds. But that was ancient technology, abandoned thousands of years ago when energy shields made bullets and missiles obsolete. Why would an advanced civilization use primitive weapons? Unless the weapons weren't primitive at all. Unless they'd found a way to make kinetic weapons work against modern defenses. The propulsion system was even stranger. Rachel had tracked the ion trail left by the mysterious ship, followed it through 3 different star systems. The vessel moved fast. Incredibly fast. In some sections, it seemed to have covered distances that should have taken days in just hours. But there were no hyperlane access points along the route. No warp bubble signatures. No dimensional fold indicators. The ship just moved, like it was punching through normal space at speeds that shouldn't be possible. Dr. Torres? Her assistant, a brilliant young researcher named Kevin Walsh, interrupted her thoughts. I think they're using some kind of dimensional folding technology we've never encountered before. The math is weird, but if you compress space in front of the ship while expanding it behind. Or, Rachel cut in, her mind racing, it's something we haven't even theorized yet. Something completely outside our understanding of physics. Kevin looked uncomfortable. That's a scary thought. Everything about this is scary, Rachel muttered. 3 weeks into the investigation, just when Rachel thought she was starting to understand the pattern, another report came through. She'd been analyzing propulsion data when the alert flashed across her screen. The unknown vessel had engaged Krell forces near the Talus colonies. 12 enemy warships had been detected moving toward the settlements. The colonies had sent desperate distress calls. The nearest Dominion fleet was 6 hours away. They would have arrived to find nothing but ruins and bodies. That's what always happened with the Krell. But when the Dominion ships finally reached Talus, they found something impossible. 12 Krell vessels destroyed. The colonies completely intact. Not a single casualty. And sensor logs showing that the Krell had done something they never, ever did. They'd retreated. The Krell didn't retreat. It wasn't in their nature. They were like a force of nature, mindless and unstoppable. They attacked until they won or until they were all dead. Running away wasn't in their programming or their biology or whatever drove them forward. But they'd run from this unknown force. Rachel felt her blood turn to ice water in her veins. She sat back in her chair, staring at the data with growing horror. Whoever these people were, whatever they were, they'd accomplished something in a few months that the entire Dominion military couldn't manage in 3 years of brutal warfare. They'd made the Krell afraid. Rachel pulled up a star map, marking every known encounter with the mysterious force. 3 separate engagements. 3 complete victories. 0 friendly casualties. And the Krell were actively avoiding sectors where this unknown ship had been spotted. She typed a message to High Command with shaking hands. Investigation continuing. Unknown force demonstrates consistent pattern of protecting settlements from Krell attacks. Technology far beyond our current understanding. Tactical capability suggests extensive combat experience. Recommendation: continue search efforts. Priority: establish contact before this force views the Dominion as a threat. Because that was the terrifying question hanging over everything. Right now, this unknown civilization seemed to be on their side, protecting colonies and fighting the Krell. But what happened if that changed? What if they decided the Dominion was the enemy? Rachel looked at the data one more time and made a decision. She would find these people. She would make contact. And she would get answers. The galaxy needed to know who was out there in the darkness, fighting their battles and winning wars with weapons that shouldn't exist. Rachel's research vessel, the Seeker, dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light. She'd been following the trail for 5 weeks now, jumping from system to system, analyzing every trace of ion particles and energy residue. And finally, her persistence had paid off. There it was. The ship hung in space like a predator waiting in the darkness. Rachel had seen thousands of ship designs in her career. Elegant Vaxel cruisers with their flowing curves. Massive Torgon haulers that looked like floating cities. Even the organic horror of Krell bioships. But this was something else entirely. The vessel was huge, easily the size of a Dominion battlecruiser. But where Dominion ships were smooth and aerodynamic, this thing was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. The hull was covered in thick armor plating that looked almost crude, like someone had welded sheets of metal together by hand. No elegant curves. No artistic flourishes. Just raw, functional design. But it was the weapons that made Rachel's breath catch in her throat. Dozens of launch tubes lined the sides. Turrets bristled from every surface, their barrels thick and solid. And there were systems mounted on the hull that her scanners couldn't even identify. They didn't match any known weapon profile in the database. Dr. Torres, her communications officer, said nervously, "Should we approach?" Rachel straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. "Open a channel. All frequencies. Let's see if anyone's home." The comm system crackled to life. Rachel spoke clearly and slowly. "This is Dr. Rachel Torres of the Galactic Dominion. We are a peaceful research vessel. We mean you no harm. We only wish to talk. Please respond." Silence. Then static. Rachel was about to repeat the message when a voice came through the speakers. It was speaking in a language she'd never heard before. The sounds were strange, the rhythm unfamiliar. But her ship's AI was already working, analyzing patterns, comparing them to the 14,000 languages in its database. The voice continued speaking. Then suddenly, like a door unlocking, the translation program kicked in. Words began forming from the static. Identify yourself. This is Captain Jake Mitchell, United Nations Space Command Ship Valiant. You're in violation of... Wait, your translator's working now. Where are you from? The view screen flickered and a face appeared. Rachel found herself staring at a creature that looked almost familiar, yet completely alien. Two eyes, positioned forward for binocular vision. Bilateral symmetry. Hair on the top of the head. No scales, no extra limbs, no obvious cybernetic enhancements. Just a baseline biological organism in a military uniform. The creature, this Captain Jake Mitchell, looked just as surprised to see her. Captain Mitchell, Rachel began, trying to keep her voice steady. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a xenoarchaeologist with the Galactic Dominion. We are a coalition of 847 different species spanning 50,000 star systems across this region of space. We've been tracking your vessel for several weeks now, following your engagements with the Krell forces. Jake's expression changed. His eyes, which Rachel noticed were a striking blue color, widened slightly. Hold on. Back up a second. Did you just say 847 species? A galactic dominion? Yes, Captain. We thought this sector was unclaimed space. We've been out here for 6 months and we haven't detected any signs of advanced civilization. No communication signals, no space stations, no traffic. Nothing. Rachel felt something cold settle in her stomach. Captain Mitchell, I need to ask you some questions. How long has your species been capable of faster-than-light travel? Jake glanced at someone off-screen, then back at Rachel. About 200 years, give or take. We developed the slipspace drive back in the early 22nd century. Why? 200 years. Rachel's mind was racing. That was impossible. Every species that developed FTL travel showed up on the Dominion's monitoring network within months. The gravitational distortions alone would have triggered alarms across a dozen systems. And during those 200 years, Rachel continued carefully, have you encountered any other intelligent species? Any signs of extraterrestrial civilization? No, Jake said. You're the first. We've surveyed hundreds of systems. Found some interesting microbial life, a few planets with complex ecosystems, but nothing intelligent. Nothing technological. He paused. Dr. Torres, are you telling me there's been a whole galactic civilization out here this entire time, and we never detected it? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Captain. But the more important question is this. How is it possible that we never detected you? The implications were hitting Rachel like physical blows. The archives keeper had been certain that no species could achieve spaceflight without being noticed. The monitoring network was comprehensive, automated, constantly scanning for signs of new civilizations. It had worked perfectly for 10,000 years. Until now. Captain, where exactly do you come from? What's the name of your home system? Sol, Jake replied. Third planet called Earth. We've got colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan. Mining operations in the asteroid belt. The usual. Rachel pulled up a star chart on her console. AI, locate system designated, Sol, in galactic coordinates. The AI responded immediately. No system by that designation exists in the database. Searching for planetary body designated, Earth. No matches found. Rachel looked back at the view screen at Captain Jake Mitchell and his impossible ship. Captain, according to our records, which span 10,000 years of galactic history, your home system doesn't exist. Your species doesn't exist. You're a complete blind spot in our surveillance network. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, though there was no humor in it. So what you're saying is, humanity has been spacefaring for 2 centuries, and we've been completely invisible to the galaxy's most advanced civilization? That's exactly what I'm saying. Well, Jake said slowly, that's both terrifying and kind of impressive. Rachel couldn't disagree. A species that could hide from the Dominion sensors for 200 years, develop weapons that could shred Krell warships, and move through space using technology that broke every known rule of physics? Captain Mitchell, Rachel said carefully, I think we need to talk. And I mean really talk. Because right now, you and your people are the biggest mystery the galaxy has encountered in millennia. Jake nodded. Agreed. You're welcome to come aboard the Valiant, Dr. Torres. I think we've got a lot to discuss. And I've got a feeling both of us are about to have our understanding of the universe completely rewritten. Rachel stepped through the airlock onto the Valiant's bridge and immediately knew she wasn't in a Dominion vessel anymore. Everything about this ship was different. The walls were metal, painted in dull gray. The lighting was harsh and bright, not the soft ambient glow of Dominion designs. Control panels had physical buttons and switches alongside holographic displays. It felt industrial, practical, built for function over form. Captain Jake Mitchell stood waiting for her, flanked by his bridge crew. They all watched her with curious eyes, probably wondering what an alien scientist looked like up close. Rachel tried not to feel self-conscious about her purple skin and four-fingered hands. "Welcome aboard the Valiant, Dr. Torres," Jake said, extending his hand in what she recognized as a human greeting gesture. She'd seen it in the cultural database her AI had quickly compiled. "Let me show you around." He led her to the weapons control station where a woman in a military uniform was running diagnostics on various systems. "This is Lieutenant Amy Carson, our weapons officer. Amy, Dr. Torres wanted to understand how we've been so effective against the Krell." Amy looked up and nodded. "Doctor, I understand you people use energy weapons? Plasma cannons, particle beams, that sort of thing?" "Yes," Rachel confirmed. "Kinetic weapons were abandoned thousands of years ago. Once energy shields became standard, physical projectiles became obsolete. They just bounce off or get vaporized before impact." Jake grinned, and there was something almost predatory in that smile. "That's what we thought too when we first encountered shields and Krell ships. Took us about 2 weeks to figure out the workaround." "Workaround?" Rachel asked. Amy pulled up a holographic display showing a cross-section of a railgun. "These are magnetic accelerators. We load a tungsten slug, about 10 tons of solid metal, and accelerate it using electromagnetic coils. By the time it leaves the barrel, it's moving at 30 kilometers per second." Rachel did the math in her head and felt her blood run cold. That's a fraction of light speed." "Exactly," Jake said. "Your energy shields are designed to disperse heat and deflect particle beams. They're good at that. But a solid chunk of metal with that much kinetic energy? Physics doesn't care about your shields. The projectile punches straight through and keeps going until it hits something solid. Like, say, the reactor core of a Krell bioship. But that's..." Rachel struggled to find words. "That's primitive technology." "Primitive doesn't mean ineffective," Amy said. She pulled up another display. "We also use missiles. These carry nuclear warheads, fusion bombs, antimatter charges. They're slower than railgun slugs, but we launch them in swarms. Hundreds at a time. Overwhelm the enemy's point defense systems." Rachel stared at the weapon schematics with growing horror. "You use nuclear weapons in ship-to-ship combat?" "When necessary," Jake said simply. "We've also got cyber warfare capabilities. Our AI systems can infiltrate enemy networks, disable their weapons, corrupt their navigation. We call it electronic warfare." He pulled up combat footage on the main view screen. Rachel watched as a human destroyer engaged 3 Krell warships. The Dominion would have approached with careful formation tactics, maintaining distance, trading beam fire in a careful dance of naval combat. That wasn't what she saw on the screen. The human ship dove straight into the middle of the Krell formation. Railguns fired from multiple angles simultaneously. Missiles streamed out in waves, filling space with explosions. The humans targeted specific systems, crippling engines, destroying weapons ports, systematically dismantling their opponents. One Krell ship tried to close for boarding. The human destroyer released some kind of electronic pulse that shut down the Krell vessel's biological systems completely. It went dead in space. "We study our enemies," Jake explained. "The Krell use organic ships with biological control systems. They're vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses and radiation. Their regeneration makes them tough, but sustained kinetic damage overwhelms their healing faster than they can adapt." Rachel watched another clip. This one showed a different battle near a civilian colony. A human destroyer was heavily damaged, venting atmosphere, its hull torn open. The Krell were closing in for the kill. Then the destroyer changed course. It turned directly toward a massive Krell carrier and accelerated. "What are they doing?" Rachel whispered. "What had to be done?" Jake said quietly. The destroyer rammed into the carrier at full combat speed. For a moment nothing happened. Then a blinding flash filled the screen as the destroyer's fusion reactor detonated. When the light cleared, the carrier was gone. So were 6 other Krell ships that had been nearby. Rachel felt sick. "You sacrificed your own ship?" "The crew evacuated first," Jake said. His voice was soft but firm. "Except for 17 volunteers who stayed behind to pilot her in. They knew what they were doing. There were 3,000 civilians in that colony the Krell were about to attack. Those 17 people saved every single one of them. Amy spoke up. We've been fighting the Krell for 6 months. We've cataloged their tactics, their weapons, their behavior patterns. They're predictable. They rely on numbers and overwhelming force. They have biological regeneration that makes them tough, but they don't adapt their strategy. They just keep doing the same thing over and over. Humans don't fight like that, Jake added. We adapt. We learn. We find weaknesses and exploit them. It's what we've always done. Rachel's mind was putting pieces together, and she didn't like the picture they formed. How long has your species been fighting wars? Jake looked uncomfortable. Written history goes back about 10,000 years. We've been fighting each other pretty much the entire time. Wars over territory, resources, ideology, religion. We got really good at it. Rachel understood now. The Krell were dangerous because they were relentless. But they weren't creative. They were essentially a force of nature. Humans were something else entirely. They were a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare against opponents who could think, adapt, and fight back. They'd developed tactics and weapons designed to counter every possible defense. And now they'd brought all that experience to space. The Krell never stood a chance. Rachel looked at Jake Mitchell, at Lieutenant Amy Carson, at the crew working efficiently around her. They seemed friendly, helpful, almost casual. But she'd just seen what they were capable of. She needed to contact the Dominion immediately. Humanity wasn't just an unknown species. They were potentially the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever encountered. And right now, nobody in the Dominion even knew they existed. The Dominion Council chamber had been in session for 16 hours straight. Representatives from 847 species argued back and forth about what to do with humanity. Some wanted immediate integration. Others demanded quarantine. A few paranoid voices called for preemptive military action. Rachel sat in the observation gallery, exhausted from explaining her findings for the dozenth time. She'd warned them. Humanity wasn't a threat unless you made them one. They'd been protecting colonies, fighting the Krell, asking for nothing in return. Then the alarm started screaming. Admiral Kyle Brennan was on the bridge of the Eternal Watch when the sensors lit up like a nightmare. 300 Krell signatures, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were heading straight for Vaxilia Prime, the Dominion capital. Home to 17 billion souls. This wasn't a raid. This was an invasion. A decapitation strike meant to cut the head off the Dominion government in one devastating blow. All ships, battle formation, Kyle ordered, his voice steady despite the fear running through his veins. Deploy defensive perimeter around the planet. Send emergency broadcast on all frequencies. We need every available ship here now. His tactical officer looked up with grim eyes. Sir, we have 167 ships in range. The nearest reinforcements are 4 hours out. Kyle stared at the holographic display. 167 against 300. The math was simple and brutal. They were going to lose. The only question was how many civilians they could evacuate before the end. All ships engage at will, he said quietly. Make them pay for every inch of space. The Dominion fleet moved into position. Plasma cannons charged. Particle beams locked onto targets. Every captain knew this might be their last battle, but not one of them hesitated. Then Kyle's sensor officer shouted, "Sir, new contacts. 7 ships dropping out of? I don't know what that is, but they're here." 7 angular vessels appeared in the middle of the combat zone, materializing out of some kind of spatial distortion that made Kyle's sensors go haywire. He recognized the hull configuration immediately. Human ships. A transmission crackled through the comm system. "Dominion Fleet, this is Captain Jake Mitchell of the UNSC Valiant. We picked up your distress beacon about 20 minutes ago. Figured you might need a hand." Kyle felt hope surge in his chest. "Captain Mitchell, we appreciate the assistance, but you're heavily outnumbered. We're facing 300 Krell warships." "Yeah, we noticed," Jake replied, and Kyle could hear the grin in his voice. "Looks like a party. Story of humanity's existence, really. Always outnumbered. Always showing up anyway. Oh, and Rachel, if you're listening somewhere down there, tell your council we'll have some very pointed words about those uncontacted species protocols later. But right now, let's clear your skies." The human ships didn't wait for acknowledgement. They just attacked. Kyle had seen a lot of naval battles in his career. He thought he understood combat tactics. But watching humans fight was like watching physics itself get angry. The UNSC destroyer Typhoon dove straight into a formation of 12 Krell ships, railguns blazing. The Krell turned to engage, thinking they had an easy kill. That's when the Typhoon cut its engines and drifted, letting momentum carry it forward while it spun on its axis, guns firing in every direction. The Krell ships, suddenly caught in overlapping fire from Dominion cruisers that the Typhoon had deliberately led them toward, started exploding one after another. The human carrier Liberty launched missiles in waves. Not dozens. Hundreds. The sky filled with contrails as nuclear warheads streaked toward Krell positions. Point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were just too many. Explosions bloomed across space like deadly flowers. Kyle watched in amazement as human ships executed maneuvers that should have been suicide. They dove close, fought at ranges where a single hit could be fatal, used their own vessels as bait to lure Krell into traps. It was reckless. It was aggressive. It was working. Then Kyle saw the Valiant take a direct hit from a Krell biocannon. The ship's armor buckled. Atmosphere vented into space. Half the weapon systems went offline. Valiant, retreat and regroup, Kyle ordered. You've done enough. Jake's response was immediate. Negative, Admiral. We're not done yet. Kyle watched in horror as the Valiant, trailing debris and venting plasma, changed course. It was heading straight for the largest Krell vessel in the fleet, a massive dreadnought that was coordinating the enemy attack. Captain Mitchell, what are you doing? Something stupid probably, Jake replied. His voice was calm. Too calm. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Emergency evacuation right now. You've got 60 seconds. Escape pods began ejecting from the Valiant, small capsules shooting away in all directions. But the ship itself kept accelerating, driving toward the Krell dreadnought like a spear. The Krell tried to destroy it. Biocannons fired. Energy beams lashed out. But the Valiant was already too damaged to care. It just kept coming. At the last second, Kyle saw the ship's fusion reactor overload. The Valiant rammed into the dreadnought's command structure and detonated. The explosion was blinding. When Kyle's sensors cleared, the dreadnought was gone. So were 6 other Krell ships that had been nearby.